I have this hypothesis about what makes a rathalos actually enjoyable to fight. And they've been making a lot of rathali over the years. They've been pumping them out of the factories ever since the first one on PS2. A lot of them I kind of feel are pretty hit and miss, but I like this one. This one's pretty good. And I think the high quality rathalos fight conjecture is basically that the enjoyment that you can get out of a fight with a rathalos is inversely proportional to the amount of time the rathalos is able to maintain an elevation difference between the two of you. Anything below third generation generally doesn't really do very well by this metric, because that was before the point that rathalos even had a kind of intermediate hovering mode like Kushala does. But that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, really. This is one of the better rathalos fights from what could still technically be considered a second generation game, and I think that really comes from the feeling that he's flying offensively. It's to get a position advantage for another one of his attacks and not just to make himself uninteractively invincible for the next 30 seconds. He has very few attacks that don't have some kind of punish window, and he doesn't waste a lot of time in transitions between animations, like air to ground, ground to air, that kind of thing. I was originally doing this as a hitless run, I guess to kind of just like prove to myself that I'd mastered the fight to a degree, but really this is more just an examination of Rathalos Zenith in general, like what it is in this game, how it compares to other fights, like what it does well. And I really just think that this run in particular happens to display a lot of the things that I've been thinking about while fighting him, while learning to get this fight down. That said, Switch Axe wouldn't really be my first pick if I were to do this again, honestly. We'll get to that later, put a pin in that. But yeah, as I was saying, I am playing quite cautiously at the beginning here because I was expecting to, attempt to do it hitless. And really that just kind of lines up quite conveniently with the general approach I've been trying to take lately in terms of fights like this, where I don't really want to come into the arena from second one and start going full aggro, because I guess I haven't really had a chance to warm up to the fight yet. There's been like a minute or two's worth of downtime between one run and the next run. It's good to have that little time to just get a feel for the pace of a fight again, get in the moment, have a little mental warm-up after a minute or two's worth of downtime. And in Frontier specifically, your damage really snowballs with good gameplay, so you can take a second at the beginning and you'll still be doing way more damage at the end anyway. This right here is one of his little nasty tricks that he has up his sleeve, this sort of Roman cancel dash where he rushes forwards for about all of 5 frames at full speed. It sucks to deal with because you really can't do anything about that on reaction, it's way too fast, so what do we do about it? For me, this is the point at which I transfer over from thinking about things on that second by second, how do I dodge what's coming after this telegraph right now kind of mindset, and instead more into this idea of how do I maintain an awareness on the entire possibility space of his moveset. That just kind of means you've got to be predictive. You have to play mind games with the digital dragon is basically what I'm trying to get at here. And Millennia Elden Ring, Blade of Nicola, will teach you this if you have the patience for it. To the point that I've kind of started referring to these as waterfowl awareness checks. Now the idea of an attack that you need to bear in mind, because it's a total fight definer, obviously doesn't just come from her, but it was one of those key moments that I think stood out to me as a fight that really wanted you to internalize that one skill of keeping a problem move in lines and having a plan for it. Being able to enact that plan on a moment's notice. Because, you don't need to respond to waterfowl for most of that fight, but you do need to have a plan for it, and you need to be able to put that plan into motion very, very quickly. And it's not really a mechanically complicated attack, like the execution check isn't what kills you in a waterfowl scenario. It's the fact that you tried to play it off as though you could treat it like any other attack. As though you could just stay up close and deal with it in stride like anything else. It really is quite a lot to deal with while you're learning, and it can feel pretty bullshit just having this thing that suddenly comes out of nowhere sometimes to interrupt you while you feel like you're getting into a bit of a flow with a fight. So check out the spacing on some of these fireballs, god damn, look at that. But yeah, it can feel kind of cheap when you're coming across it while you're learning, but it's worth bearing in mind that you're not fighting an adaptive opponent here. This Rathalos is always going to attack in the same set of ways. So if you know that there's something bad that could happen in a number of situations, then you really want to be treating that like a kind of rule that the boss has been applying to the fight as a whole. Like, oh no, Melania can do this attack that is just unbeatable. It comes out with no warning and it kills me. Okay, well, when is she not able to do it? When are you safe, definitively? Can you find somewhere that's a good middle ground of those two? And yeah, I don't trust most of the fireballs this guy has. They're just kind of too big for their own good, but I can get more into that later. Especially that cone of 5 rapid fire fireballs that he does. They've all got these little sub-explosions that pop off individually, so it's really hard to tell what exactly is meant to be where. He's not even in rage right now, but I think that's going to last for all of one animation. Yeah, here we go. Classic. Anyway, yeah, unlike Waterfowl Dance, the Roman cancel dash that Rathalos has is really just a single hit that you have to worry about, and it has very short range. So for the most part, the way that I deal with it here is just using Switch Axe's innate range to keep a couple steps ahead out in front of its face. And every now and then you can even throw out like a little preemptive parry if you feel like you just want to check, if you just want to stay safe. But yeah, good spacing takes care of a lot of it. And being cautious when he slow turns to face you helps out a lot too. I'm only just getting around to properly learning this fight now because I never really had the space for it in retail when the servers were live. Rathalos is a second generation Zenith monster, so the first group of Zeniths that came out was, what was it now? It was Kezu, it was Espinas, Hypnoc, and, oh yeah, Daimyo Hermitor, that was the other one, he's great. But yeah, I was still working on that set of gear when Rathalos came out, and honestly, even after that point, Rathalos's equipment just didn't really find a meaningful place in the long-term meta. It looks stylish as hell though, those sets are great, I'll probably put a picture up here in a sec. And when gear progression matters, you typically don't want to be going back and doing the old thing all the time, so this has given me a great excuse to actually learn some of these fights, because the Zeniths are very enjoyable on their own. They're quite like deviant monsters from Generations. They take an old concept and kind of update it with some new interesting ideas. A lot of Zeniths will have a move like this, something big and deadly and flashy, something that really warps the pace of the fight around itself as you have to stop and deal with it, and this one's quite nice as far as they go really. Like the fire tick damage in the middle can get mean, but the explosion itself is just a single hit, and I'm pretty sure you can parry it too. This dive bomb's actually a lot more dangerous in comparison because it can do some very silly things to camera angles, because you have to account for the fact that Rathalos can go straight past you over your head, and that really throws me off. Anyway, this is why we always go for those tail counter hits. I don't always get the punish, sometimes it's a spacing thing, sometimes the angle is just wrong, but I find it's worth going for just because, like, yeah, cutting off the tail with one of those charged punish hits just feels so good. And Unenrage is here just to deny me a quick drop that I could parry. And check out these whack-ass second-gen guard hitboxes too, watch this. Isn't that stupid? This game really wants you to develop a sense of attack propagation direction without actually giving you any tools to understand it. So when you do know how these things work, you look insane, and when you don't know how they work, you feel insane. Unfortunate hit on the dive bombs there, but that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with that attack. The length of the dive bomb in distance is fixed. So if you're close to where he starts, he can easily drop straight behind you and throw off your sense of how to react. And yeah, you can just learn the timing for it. But, I mean, A, having multiple Qs is easier to react to, and 2, I just never expect him to do that attack while unenraged. It's such an irrelevant part of the fight that it almost becomes dangerous again. And speaking of danger, that jump back fireball is really nasty sometimes. You can see how much time it takes for him to get that out. Just jumps back at a moment's notice and you have to be on the ball to dodge it quick enough. It's a specific animation too, but this guy has been jumping back for a lot of things all the fight, so you get desensitized to it sometimes, and yeah, I'm kind of tempted to put that in that same waterfowl awareness check category. You know, like, were you playing with this attack in mind? Do you have a plan? Better hope so. I have a plan for this attack, and it does not involve being behind Rathalos at all. You really don't want to be there, because when he flaps and takes up off the ground, if you're not doing anything, he'll just catch you in a wind burst. And then you'll just be caught unable to parry or dodge or anything while the explosion goes off. I've been caught out by that a number of times while I've been practicing this fight, but thankfully when you're playing it truly solo, a lot of the time it kind of takes care of itself because he's always facing towards you anyway, and you can work with that. And you can still end up behind him after a fire spin or something like that, but generally you don't need to stay there for very long. And with a heavier weapon like this, your swings will counteract the wind pressure anyway, so it's not really a huge deal. But if you're just kind of waiting around to time a swing into an evade slash, then yeah, that's what's going to catch you out. Anyway, yeah, that's basically the fight on Switch Axe. This is all the shit that I'm using on screen in a minute. You can pause if you care. This isn't exactly hyper god gaming min-maxing or anything like that. This is just my general purpose Switch Axe stylish assault set. I did start out using Reflect set for this initially, because I really like Reflect as a skill, but just like for damage purposes, you ramp up a lot harder with stylish assault bonuses. And especially in a fight like this that doesn't really have any huge multi-hit parries to really abuse with Reflect, it just doesn't really make sense. But yeah, good fight. I like this one. Good job, Rathalos. This one's an unenraged attack, so I learned it quite late. But really, you just have to avoid looking at the head. It really wants you to look at the head, but the foot is really what you want to be paying attention to. Just a little misdirection. Here's another look at those Roman cancel charges from earlier, and particularly why they can be such a problem, because once he does one and lands it on you, he seems to get the idea that he can land another couple of them, so you get these weird combos. Here he manages to bait me into parrying too early, and yeah, watch this bullshit. Okay, now watch it again. Incredible. But yeah, also to bring it back on track a little bit, this is the kind of spacing that you really want to be playing in, so you have that room to move. Also, yeah, this attack gets way easier to deal with when he's weakened, because he replaces those Roman charge dashes with just a limp into a bite. So this is the other thing it can do on a jump back, and it will tend to do this if it notices that you're staying back instead of coming towards it. So your best option when he's doing a jump back is to just sprint with your weapon drawn towards him, and then you'll either be able to roll through this attack or you'll be able to be in place for the fireball. If you're already very close, you can get away with just rolling, but it's risky, and you can parry it, but I really don't recommend it. I've never found a way to make this consistent. I mentioned this briefly earlier, but this is why I don't trust those fireballs after the jump back. They have this deceptively wide hitbox, so they keep clipping me whenever I try and judge the distance by eye. So now I always just try and dodge through the second one, using the first one as this tempo setter. The hitboxes behind the head are really good actually, look at that, you can just get away with it too. And then the only other thing he can do in the air is the same thing that he's been doing since like 2004, just the 3 fireballs in the air as usual. The fire spin has its own little technicalities. You can see here that I managed to parry it properly, but then I get hit with the return swing of its tail coming around, so you really don't want to be on Rathalos' left side for this. And yeah, these wacky-ass parry hitboxes again, man. Like, all this attack really is, it's just a charge. It's just a hitbox that goes straight forward in the direction that Rathalos is facing, and you should completely ignore the rotation. I'm not going to go over whole runs with other weapons, but I do feel like this is a good exercise just to basically knowledge check myself, I suppose. I quite like trying to pull off the same fight on a different weapon just to see what you can get away with. And one of the things that I really notice about Tonfas as a matchup against this Rathalos is that it gives you so many great opportunities to do these storm punches, like jump in, charge up, use some of your meter, smack into the head, and it all takes about like maybe a second's worth of charging. It's not very long, but it's a playstyle that I really like taking advantage of whenever I can, just because I find it fun to shift things up a little bit from aerial X-dodge spams all the time. And most of Rathalos' moves in this fight have this big recovery period afterwards where he either drops back down to the ground or he's finishing charging up a fireball or what have you. And yeah, it's just enough of a gap that allows you to get these charged punches in between. And because the charge punches are quick enough to take advantage of those small gaps, and because the Tonfas are kind of very tuned around having all of these iframe moves available at a moment's notice, it means you do get to slow the pace of the fight down a little bit perceptually and really just kind of focus on, you know, finding those moments to get in, get off a punch and, you know, do a couple of little dodgy moves around. It does feel quite relaxed in contrast to like the typical aerial Tonfa playstyle, which I find can be a bit more like frenetic and a bit hard to keep a track of. Also, I really like finding uses for this little backdash attack, this one, and this wing slam move is great for that. It's basically only used for disengages, which means that, like, if you're busy trying to kill something, it's not great for DPS potential, but it looks very stylish to do. It's a lot of fun to pull off, so I'll take any opportunity I can to make use of it. But yeah, really, I've been finding the Tomfa matchup here to be one that I'm coming back to more often than the Switch Axe one. Like, I'll just be doing casual play sessions on my own, and I'll just be like, okay, and yeah, this has a nice back and forth to it. I really want something that just, like, has this groove that I feel I can get into, and it just feels pretty intuitive. It gives you so many cues to work out what you're doing, and a lot of the time and space that you need to prepare for it all, and all of the dodges that you need to escape from it once you're actually done with it. And even shines a light on some of the lesser used moves in the Tomfa's kit. It's great. All around, just like very enjoyable time. It is a weapon with a lot of aerial advantage, so I guess in a sense that does kind of draw attention to the fact that this is a much more grounded rathalos than what we're normally getting, but you do still get a couple of like pretty good opportunities to do some nice little aerial dodge stuff here and there too. And I love Switch Axe. It's a wonderful weapon. It does so many things that I'm really happy with, but the top tiers of my weapon preference tier list are very crowded. So yeah, if I were to do this all again, I would probably just stick with Tomfas like all the way through. I think this is way more fun. However, just as another like really minor inconsequential thing that bugs me, it is weirdly hard to get your X evades off on this attack specifically. I'm not sure why exactly. I think it's got something to do with like the elevation difference between the hurt box coming in and your character model moving along the floor in like a very definitely at floor level kind of way. But yeah, whatever it is, these are all clips from like 1, maybe 2 fights. And yeah, like, come on bro, where's my attack boost? Okay, greatsword. I don't really play greatsword very often. I have to do a lot of mental work to convince myself not to play it like a Switch Axe, and I'm far from a master greatsword player, but this fight does have quite a good couple of opportunities to get out these blender attacks after you've built up your parries on a couple of hits. A lot of skills are quite transferable between weapon classes. Like I learned this on Switch Axe first, and then I went and did it on Tomfas, and I found it pretty comfortable because I knew all the timings for dodges and stuff like that. Greatsword kind of works on its own rule set a little bit, which is why it's a good one for getting another perspective on, because you basically have to relearn the fight to accommodate for these very large gaps that you need to get that blender move going. And yes, some of these are only really getting their full length out because I get like a lucky stagger at some point in the big blender. But I mean, A, that's like, it's kind of what the blender does, and 2, you can roll cancel out of them anyway. So like if you're not feeling good about one of them and you can see another attacker's coming in, you can always just like get out of there pretty quickly. It's also one of the better weapons that I've used for trying to punish this fire spin right here. I've got the sigil to make my sword extra long so I can really bully him in the tail when the opportunity comes up, and the degree to which you can pivot after getting that parry into the counter is like some Wilds level shit. Like it just looks like I've pulled out my focus camera to do a quick 180. Pretty good one overall. I think that most of the difficulty came with just adjusting to what greatsword expects me to be doing, more so than trying to adjust my knowledge of rathalos to what I should be doing with a greatsword, if that makes any sense. Between the fact that I'd learned the parry timings through Switch Axe and the fact that I kind of knew that there was all of this free time in between that Tomfas were able to get in those punches, it kind of both comes together on this weapon, at least for basic counter hits, and the rest is just kind of my relative inexperience with the weapon itself, I suppose. And let's see what Lance is up to as well. I use Frontier's Extreme Lance a lot more in multiplayer than I do solo. It's got a lot of tools for dealing with things. It's a very safe feeling weapon. I feel like I'm pretty confident at, getting through a fight when I'm using it, but doing good damage with it is another thing. But it does make the periods of mixed elevation combat really quite comfy, because you can just kind of sit there and block most of it. Especially if you've got Reflect, you just get rewarded for sitting there not doing much. I suppose that's kind of what people complain about with Lance in this game in general. And rathalos is stuck in a loop right now where he's just doing the same dive bomb thing over and over, so I guess we can really just both be petty bitches at each other and like stay entirely out of each other's attack ranges for a bit. This version of Lance is still very poke 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 hop like the original ones, except you have like a couple of combo extenders and stuff here and there. So you don't really get to prepare a counter and hold it for a next attack that's coming out. But you can pull off some weird stuff with the sprinting block, like this isn't meant to be blockable normally, so it's working on its own rules. But yeah, for consistency's sake, I'd still say it's probably worth just dodging it and then holding block, because you're basically safe once you've gotten to this point anyway, even if you're right in the corner. This is a guard +3 set as well, which I mainly mentioned just because it demonstrates the difference between blocking one of these wind busts and just dodging through it normally. Even with this much block power, you still just want to dodge that thing. I think there's a real difference between the kind of way you play when you're learning something to get it down in a farm group and the way you play when you're trying to understand something to get like a total comprehension of what a monster's moveset is and what you're meant to be doing in response to that. Especially when the fights can get quite technical, and like God knows there's some fights in this game that are really quite intimidating. So I had a lot of fun putting together a closer look at this rathalos just to, I guess, like give him the credit he deserves. And yeah, I want to do some more of these for fights that I really enjoy and feel like I need to like properly practice in order to get down. So hopefully this was at least somewhat interesting. Yeah, have a good one. See ya.